Greetings, this is dslyecxi, and welcome to another episode of Musings on Serious Fun. In this episode, I want to talk about player skill level, training and competency, and various aspects of how our ARMA sessions flow in Shackdeck. This is a Q&A sort of video with some thematically related questions woven together into a broader talk. As a community, Shackdeck is pretty far past the point of trying to figure out the best approaches for things or finding its identity. We've long been in the realm of gradual refinement and improvement, identifying what actually matters, streamlining it, and cutting out anything unnecessary or harmful to the group experience. What I'll talk about here should be viewed in that light, the end results of over 15 years of group evolution. The first question is from DJ Noob, who was asking about player skill level, and how we work with newer members who might have less skill at the game. In short, player skill isn't a factor in my selection process. Personality, attitude, motivation, that kind of stuff is much more important. We can teach you how to play ARMA, but we can't teach an asshole how to not be an asshole, or rather the effort involved in trying isn't worth it for us, and we have tried. ARMA isn't the easiest game to get into. For people new to it, it can be pretty intimidating, even more so when you add mods and a large number of other players. It's important for us to bring people in and establish a baseline knowledge that will give them the best chances for long-term success in the group, and we've built an onboarding process that does just that. When someone joins the group, there's a lot of documentation available to help them get situated and understand what resources are available for them in ARMA. For any batch of new joins, we run orientation sessions that can last a few hours, in which a specific, vetted group of senior members of the community talk new players through how we play, what special systems we have, what they need to be familiar with, basically everything that gives them a solid starting foundation. I can't emphasize strongly enough that this is nothing like a bootcamp environment. We're welcoming potential long-term members of the community and giving them a first impression. It's about being helpful, friendly, informative, and responsive to their questions. I will personally never understand why people put up with being talked down to, harassed, or made to do inane pedantry in a gaming training environment with people that you're later supposed to want to actually play the game with. That might work for some people, it does not work for me. Amerikey asked if we have any kind of training policy or competency policy for certain roles like leadership, aircraft, and similar. We have a basic set of guidelines for what roles are available to the different member tiers. In this case, we have pre-FNGs, which is the probationary role, FNG, which is basically the step up from that, but still probationary, and then full members. Our probationary role, like I said, is a pre-FNG, and then once they've had enough time to decide they want to continue further into the group, they move on to an FNG role, which is still probationary, but has more opportunities available to them. To give an example, a pre-FNG is restricted to two types of roles. They can be a rifleman, which is with or without light anti-tank, or they can be an assistant automatic rifleman. That's it. If it's a vehicle-only mission, they're able to be a driver, but in any other situation, they won't be taking that role. By restricting their roles, we ensure that they have a specific experience and a specific means of interacting with both the enemy as well as other players. They can listen to orders, follow those orders, do their basic combat tasks, call out information like contact reports, engage the enemy, and show that they're able to be a team member. Some may end up having a light anti-tank launcher, which gives them the ability to demonstrate a competency with something that can save the day in the right circumstances. They don't have the means to directly cause a mass casualty situation through a mistake, be that crashing a helo, getting a vehicle destroyed, or friendly firing people with a heavy weapon. They don't know enough about how our sessions work, and we don't know enough about them for those positions to be suitable for them to take. This is one of those aspects that you sometimes hear people outside of the community take offense at. They think of themselves as having X many hundreds or thousands of hours in ARMA, and they see it as demeaning or beneath them to be in a position in which they're not doing these sexier roles. Now, not to put too fine of a point on it, but we don't want people like that in our group. If your ego's too big to fit in the basic rifleman role, you don't have a place with us. And quite honestly, I feel sorry for whoever ends up having to put up with that stuff. A person with humility and respect for an institution isn't going to be offended at being asked to take a specific kind of role for an introductory period of time. They're going to take those roles, they're going to perform to the best of their ability, and they're going to show us that they're a capable player who doesn't let ego hamstring them. When they're ready, they move up to FNG status, and this is where things start to open up. While the pre-FNG process is usually around a month or so, the FNG state has a minimum time in rank of 6 months. The main difference here is that not only does an FNG have access to many more slots, they're also able to start demonstrating proficiency in more specialized roles once they've had a bit of time in that FNG status. An F&G can do all the roles in a fire team, and they're able to act as a fire team leader during our Wednesday sessions, which are oriented at giving people opportunities to try out new things. If they demonstrate confidence in the Wednesday sessions, they can then start doing that on Saturdays as well, which is our main session. The same thing can be said for squad leader, weapon team gunners, so things like medium anti-tank launchers or medium machine guns, as well as piloting. The things an F&G cannot be are vehicle gunners or commanders, helo gunship gunners, platoon commanders or platoon sergeants, or any kind of special forces like element, like recon or similar, roles which can all have a large-scale impact on the enjoyment of players in any given mission. If they want to do those sorts of roles, they need to have shown proficiency at every role on the path towards something special, then get past F&G status to become a full member. Since there's a minimum time and group of 7 months before someone is even eligible to become a full member, there's no way someone can join us and rush into something high responsibility that they aren't actually prepared to do. If this kind of time frame, if this idea sounds crazy or excessive to someone, it's a really good sign that they should be looking elsewhere for a community. A few people have asked about how we train over time. The short version is that on our session days, which are Wednesday and Saturday, we play the game. We have no dedicated, regular training days. If you want to learn something, we have the resources available for it. The longer answer is that when it comes to training in the group, the main training aspects are what I mentioned earlier, where every new player is given an orientation to get them up to speed on how we do things. There are sometimes impromptu training or practice sessions on special topics like helicopters, but they're really rare. You usually have more than enough opportunity to practice things in the Wednesday sessions if you're looking to expand your role or increase proficiency. Now, I'm aware that there are MILSIM groups out there that really get into the spirit of emulating the military in every possible way, where they'll do training or field exercises as their sessions, and then go on a virtual deployment or similar. This isn't a mindset I've ever been able to personally get into. It's kind of like the Miles Gear scenarios from the original America's Army. We're already playing a simulation, so why would we then play a simulation within that simulation? As long as people have resources and means to develop their skill set offline, individually, as well as on the job, the idea of doing formal training sessions or exercises or similar just doesn't have an appeal these days. We go live fire from the start, taking advantage of the possibilities of the platform right away, and not limiting ourselves because of military roleplay. Training for our purposes is usually self-taught when not in session, then on the job or mentored when in session. To give some examples of offline training, we have written resources like the TTP3 guide, an internal supplement to that, video guides like my Art of Flight VTTP or Hindsight series, and some practice missions for specific skill training. There is a ton of material there for anyone to learn a new skill with, and if someone finds a gap that isn't covered by our training material, we can always make more. In short, if someone wants to learn a role or a skill, all it takes is time and dedication on their part, and we structure our sessions to ensure that people have ample opportunity to practice new skills. Mentorship tends to happen the most for leadership and vehicle roles. This can be as simple as a new leader asking for someone experienced to slot under them in a mission, then give them feedback afterwards. Or you could have a new pilot with an experienced pilot acting as your co-pilot and giving them advice and feedback during the mission. Outside of the game, this can take the form of discussion about events that occurred, giving feedback on what was done right, as well as what could be worked on. We'll talk more on this later. For my own training efforts, I find it much more valuable to do videos like Art of Flight, VTTPs, Hindsight, and so on, than to try to have that same kind of training take place live and in-game. The means of teaching is drastically different in a produced videos like those. They're more deliberate and concise, they're better visualized, and anyone can easily reference them whenever they want, in or outside of our community. Chobus was wondering about how we're organized in-game, whether we keep people in the same units and squads and so forth. Basically, whether we have a fixed role structure or not. The short answer is no, there's no fixed role structure, no assigned squads, nothing like that. When it's time to slot up for a mission, there aren't any reserved slots or anything. We don't post a list of missions we're going to play in advance, we don't do out-of-game planning for missions, and we don't choose our roles out of game either. Our platoon structure is mostly fixed from mission to mission, but the army, and thus the weapons and gear that we have, changes to give us all sorts of different scenario possibilities. Slotting for our missions is straightforward. People are free to choose roles that either they feel confident in, such as on Saturdays, or things that they want to practice, such as on Wednesdays. First, we ask for leaders and medics to slot up, then pre-F&Gs, who we ensure are spread out amongst the squads, then pilots, and then everyone else. You're free to pick whatever, based on the criteria I laid out earlier, and when it comes to squad leading, I typically take Charlie's squad, but that's not something forced on me, it's just a squad I prefer to lead these days. For special roles like vehicles or weapon teams, aside from showing competency, the other thing we're looking for is for people to show restraint and be able to share. You may really like to do a given thing like fly, but that doesn't mean that every mission with a helo in it is something you should immediately try to slot. To give an example, the way I handle this myself is that on Wednesdays, where we have helos in a given mission, I wait until a bit after the call has been made for pilots to slot to allow others an opportunity to take those slots, which they usually do, particularly when it comes to attack helos. Sometimes there'll be a spare slot left over, like with transports, which I'll hop into if I'm feeling in the mood. For Saturday, sometimes I'll slot one at the start if it's something I really want to do that day, but more often than not, I'm leaving those to others and only taking them if it's been a while since I last did it, or there are extra slots available or no interest from the current players. I've had tons of opportunities to fly over the years, and I'd rather let others do it when they're interested. I expect other members to be the same mindset, where they look at it as a collective experience and are considerate towards what other people might want to do. When everyone's on that same wavelength, everyone's experience is improved over the long run. Once we've loaded the mission and they're actually in-game, the way our elements are positioned is such that the leadership aspects, the squad leaders, platoon commander, weapon team leaders, vehicle commanders, stuff like that, are positioned away from the rest of the players. This makes it possible for the rest of the players to talk amongst themselves while leadership is working up and briefing the plan. Once this is done with, the different element leaders return to their elements and give them their elements briefing. If you're watching a video of mine where I'm a squad leader, I'll typically start at the point where I'm giving my squad level brief, based on what the platoon commander briefed the squad leaders on previously. Since we don't do pre-planned missions or draw up briefings outside of the game, our in-game planning process is meant to be streamlined and flexible. For longer scenarios or ones with a series of objectives, the platoon commander will typically come up with a plan for the first phase or first objective, then work out details for the rest of the mission as it progresses. This allows us to get into the action sooner, and the platoon commander generally has plenty of time to continue refining the plan once the mission gets rolling. We're usually looking at from 15 to 30 minutes of briefing time overall, from mission load to the mission kicking off. About half of this is the platoon level planning and brief, while the rest is squad level, getting vehicles and things like that. So for this talk, I'll be skipping over gameplay, since that's a topic that I'll be covering in other videos moving forward, in much greater detail. When a mission is over, we move back to mission select, the admin chooses a new one, we slot it, and we're back in game a few minutes later. We don't do any kind of in-game debrief, since we'd rather be playing more missions, and instead talk about them after the whole session is over. Since it takes a few minutes for the overall leader to come up with a mission plan, people often step away from the PC to do real-world tasks if the need arises during this time, and then come back before the briefing begins. Our post-game discussion takes place in our Discord server. We have this split in a few ways to facilitate special types of discussions. Our normal AAR channel is for anything, discussion, commentary, sharing screens and videos, etc. In addition to that, we have an ARMA flying channel for discussing anything related to aircraft in the game, and an ARMA leadership one for any leadership discussions. Having these two specific channels makes it easier to have long-form discussions on those topics, while general-purpose discussions work fine in the normal AAR channel. Prior to us adopting Discord, we did post-game discussions in IRC, which was single-threaded, and thus not terribly great for it, and then we did longer ones as forum posts. Discord has largely made forums irrelevant for these kinds of talks, though some members still post screenshot galleries or similar via our forums. The overwhelming majority of our post-game discussion is in Discord, and I like that a lot more than I ever liked IRC or forum discussion. Discord makes it far easier to have it back and forth, evolving chats over something, and since our membership consists of primarily longer-term players, we've had a lot of time to work on the fundamentals and plenty of mission experiences over the years, and we're more easily able to talk about the details of what happened in a given mission as a result. So that's a higher-level overview of how we handle training and basic flow within our sessions. When a session happens, our focus is on actually playing the game and getting the most from the time that we have available, and our current systems are designed around that idea. Training, self-improvement, and similar aspects are possible outside of the session, and we have a great many resources meant to facilitate that, both written and video, as well as a detailed onboarding process for any new members. On-the-job training is facilitated by how our sessions are structured, mentorship is encouraged, particularly for leadership or vehicle usage, and we make the effort to invest in our members, instill responsibility and accountability, and not tolerate people who are selfish or have shitty attitudes. We expect players to be able to show competency and skill over time, to rise up to new challenges and roles, but we don't expect that to happen immediately, and we do our part to give those players the resources and support that they need to succeed. Players becoming more capable is a win for everyone, so there's no adversarial or competitive aspect to this sort of knowledge transfer or personal development. We're a team, and strengthening the members of our team makes us much stronger as a whole. If you're not aligned with that, you wouldn't last with us, and we've seen enough of those types in the past to recognize them pretty quickly when they show up. There are a lot of things that I've mentioned here that are deserving of their own detailed talks, and some aspects that I left out entirely for brevity's sake. But this should have given a fairly solid, broad look at those aspects. If there's anything in this one that you'd like to know further details on, note it in the comments, and I'll keep it in mind for the future. Dyslexi, and until next time, take care.